In the dense Southeast Asian jungle, a wounded staff sergeant was about to make his stand. A routine reconnaissance mission turned deadly when mercenaries led by Nguyen Bao unleashed a devastating ambush. Lucas Wolf Mercer wasn't your typical soldier. For 20 years he was elite special forces, known for his unmatched survival skills and tactical precision. When Captain Elias Wren betrayed his unit to protect a black market weapons operation, he had no idea he was creating his own nemesis. Mercer's methodical hunt through the jungle would trigger an investigation reaching the highest levels of military command. What began as one man's desperate survival would become a legend. The military hierarchy would never be the same after the ghost of the jungle delivered his particular brand of justice to those who sacrificed his brothers for profit. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Staff Sergeant Lucas Wolf Mercer felt the jungle breathing around him. The air hung thick with moisture, clinging to his skin beneath the camouflage paint that broke up the outline of his face. Behind him, 5 men moved in perfect synchronicity. Elite, reconnaissance soldiers who communicated with hand signals and knowing glances forged over countless missions. His brother's dotted Lieutenant Daryl Kane took point, moving with surprising grace for his 6'2" frame. Behind him, Sergeant Marco Maco de la Cruz scanned the tree line, his dark eyes missing nothing. The rest of the squad, Chen, Rodriguez, and Thompson, maintained formation with practiced precision. Wolf checked his watch. 0615. They'd been moving for 4 hours through the dense Southeast Asian jungle, following coordinates transmitted directly from Captain Elias Wren's intelligence team. Excitement and unease fought for dominance in Wolf's gut. Movement doesn't match previous patterns, he'd argued during the mission brief. Why would they suddenly change course? Wren had dismissed his concerns with a wave of his hand. That's why we need eyes on this, Mercer. If they're changing tactics, we need to know. A bird call, Kane's signal, brought Wolf's thoughts back to the present. The lieutenant froze, one hand raised in a halt gesture that stopped the entire unit instantly. Wolf moved forward, closing the distance between them with silent steps. River ahead, Kane whispered, his breath barely disturbing the humid air. Wider than intel suggested. Map's wrong. Wolf nodded, feeling that same unease coiled tighter in his stomach. Second time today. First the ridge elevation, now this. Could just be outdated information, Kane replied, but his eyes betrayed similar doubts. Mako materialized beside them, sweat glistening on his forehead. Something's not right, LT. Been watching our 6. Terrain's too perfect. Perfect for what? Kane asked, though Wolf suspected he already knew the answer. Perfect for an ambush. Wolf studied the way the jungle opened before them, creating natural choke points. If I were setting one, I'd do it right here. Kane's jaw tightened as he scanned the area. After a long moment, he nodded. Change of plans. We'll move south, find another crossing. As they prepared to redirect, Wolf's radio crackled. Alpha 1, this is Oversight. Status report. Wolf exchanged glances with Kane before responding. Oversight, terrain doesn't match intel. Request permission to adjust route. Captain Wren's voice came through, tinted with static. Negative, Alpha. 1, time-sensitive window. Proceed as planned. Kane took the radio. Sir, my team lead has concerns about... Your concerns are noted, Lieutenant, Wren cut in. But satellite shows clear passage. The crossing point is secure. You have your orders. The transmission ended, leaving an uneasy silence. Kane looked at Wolf, conflict clear in his eyes, duty warring with instinct. We move careful, Kane finally said. Wolf, take point. Mako, sweep our left flank, everyone on high alert. Wolf nodded, unable to shake the feeling that they were walking into something they wouldn't all walk out of. He led the squad toward the river, each step measured, each sound analyzed. 20 years in combat zones had honed his senses to a razor's edge, and every one of them was screaming. The jungle opened up slightly as they approached the water's edge. Wolf raised his fist, stopping the column. Nothing looked disturbed, but the birds had gone silent. No insects buzzed. Just the gentle gurgle of water over rocks. Too quiet, Wolf breathed. The first shot came from nowhere, a sharp crack that echoed across the clearing. Thompson dropped without a sound, a neat hole through his helmet. Before Wolf could shout a warning, the world exploded. Gunfire erupted from 3 different positions. The sharp ping of bullets hitting rocks mingled with the wet thud of rounds, finding flesh. Wolf dove for cover behind a fallen tree, his rifle already returning fire toward a muzzle flash to his right. Contact front. Contact right. Kane's voice rose above the chaos as he directed the squad's response. Chen, 2 o'clock. Rodriguez lay covering fire. Wolf saw Rodriguez pivot, his saw spinning up to unleash a blistering wave of suppressive fire. It bought them seconds, precious time for Kane to get the survivors moving toward better cover. But those seconds weren't enough. An explosion ripped through the undergrowth to their left, a hidden claymore mine triggered remotely. Chen disappeared in a cloud of dirt and shrapnel. Fall back, Kane shouted, firing controlled bursts as he moved. Wolf, Mako, Riverside, move! Wolf sprinted toward Kane's position, zigzagging through the trees. Bullets chewed bark inches from his head, but his focus remained absolute. Assess, adapt, survive. Training took over, pushing fear and confusion down beneath layers of tactical response. He reached Kane just as the lieutenant took a round to the shoulder, spinning him against a tree trunk. Wolf grabbed him, dragging him behind a massive root system. Rodriguez? Kane gasped, pressing a hand against his wound. Wolf shook his head. He'd seen the heavy gunner fall, cut down mid-stride. Mako's still moving, Wolf reported, spotting their friend providing covering fire from 20 meters away. Southside's our only exit. They've got us boxed in from 3 directions. Kane's eyes cleared as he processed the situation. Not random. They knew exactly where we'd be. He keyed his radio. Oversight Alpha 1. Heavy contact, requesting immediate. Only static answered. Wolf checked his own radio. Dead. Jammed. This was planned. Kane's voice had gone cold. They knew our route, our comms frequency. Before Wolf could respond, another explosion shattered the morning. This one closer, close enough that Wolf felt the heat rush over him. When he looked up, Mako was down, clutching his side where shrapnel had torn through his gear. Cover me, Wolf growled, already moving before Kane could respond. He sprinted to Mako's position, bullets kicking up earth at his heels. Dropping beside his friend, Wolf saw the damage immediately. Too severe, too much blood. Should have listened to you. Mako coughed, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. Always the cautious one. Save it, Wolf grunted, trying to apply pressure to the worst of the wounds. We're getting out of this. Mako's hand gripped Wolf's wrist with surprising strength. His eyes, already growing distant, locked onto Wolf's, with desperate focus. Not me. He pulled Wolf closer. Listen, it was Wren. What? Wren? Mako repeated, his voice barely audible over the continued gunfire. Heard him? Talking? Deal with someone. We weren't supposed to come back. Wolf felt ice spread through his veins. Mako, you're not making sense. But his friend's grip was already loosening, eyes fixed on something Wolf couldn't see. With a final rattling breath, Mako went still. A bullet struck the ground inches from Wolf's head, jarring him back to the present. He grabbed Mako's tags and sidearm before moving back toward Kane's position, only to find the lieutenant slumped against the tree, eyes vacant, a fresh wound center mass. He'd bled out, covering Wolf's run to Mako. The reality crashed down on Wolf with crushing force, his entire unit wiped out in minutes, his brothers gone. Movement to his left, a search team closing in. Wolf knew he had seconds before they found him. Survival now meant one thing: disappearing. He grabbed Kane's tags and pulled the lieutenant's backup knife from his boot. Looking toward the river, Wolf made his decision. Crawling on his belly, he slithered through mud and undergrowth until he reached the bank. Enemy voices grew closer, methodical, professional. They were checking bodies, confirming kills. Wolf slid into the water silently, letting the current take him downstream as he clung to a submerged log. The cold shock of water against his wounds nearly made him gasp, but training kept him silent. He remained mostly submerged, only his nose and eyes above water as he drifted away from the killing ground. The sounds of the ambush faded, replaced by the gentle gurgle of water. Wolf floated for nearly a mile before finding a secluded bank to crawl onto. His right leg burned where a bullet had grazed him and shrapnel peppered his left side, but he was alive. As he dragged himself into the cover of dense foliage, Wolf's mind replayed Mako's dying words. Wren. The name echoed in his head, igniting something beyond pain, beyond grief. A cold, focused rage took its place. A predator's, patience settling into his bones. Wolf checked his remaining equipment. Combat knife, sidearm with 2 magazines, Mako's pistol, a handful of ration bars, first aid kit, and 5 sets of dog tags that hung heavy around his neck. For the first time in his military career, Staff Sergeant Lucas Mercer was truly alone. His unit was gone. His chain of command potentially compromised. No extraction, no backup, no orders to follow. Wolf looked back toward the river in the direction of the ambush site where his brothers lay dead. Something fundamental shifted inside him. The soldier who followed orders fading away, replaced by something older and more dangerous. He would hunt down the men who did this. He would find the truth behind Mako's final word. And then, he would bring a reckoning. Tearing a strip from his undershirt, Wolf bound his leg wound. The physical pain was distant now, overshadowed by a clarity of purpose he'd never known before. As he melted deeper into the jungle, a single thought crystallized in his mind. Today, they had killed Staff Sergeant Lucas Mercer. Tomorrow they would learn why they called him Wolf. The moon cast silver fingers through the canopy as Wolf worked by feel, tugging the improvised suture through the ragged edge of the bullet wound on his thigh. His teeth clenched around a strip of leather, cut from his belt, trapping the groan that threatened to escape. 1 stitch. 2. The needle, fashioned from a fishing hook in his survival kit, punctured flesh again. 3. He tied off the final stitch and bit through the thread, tasting copper where he'd bitten through his own lip earlier. Blood had soaked through the remains of his uniform pants and dried to a stiff crust. 26 hours since the ambush. 26 hours since he'd watched his brothers die. Wolf closed his eyes, seeing their faces. Kane's determined expression as he covered Wolf's desperate run to reach Mako. The light fading from Mako's eyes as he whispered that name. Wren, when Wolf opened his eyes again, something had hardened in them. A cold resolve that pushed the grief deep beneath tactical necessity. Survival now. Vengeance later. He took inventory of his makeshift camp, a natural depression between massive tree roots, covered with layered foliage for concealment. His scavenged equipment lay organized. Before him, the pistols, 7 remaining magazines, knife, first aid supplies. Not enough. Not nearly enough to hunt the men who'd killed his unit, which meant he needed to return to the ambush site. Wolf moved like a shadow through the pre-dawn darkness, each step placed with deliberate care. The jungle had taught him patience years ago, how to wait, how to listen, how to become part of the environment rather than an intruder within it. He'd earned his call sign honestly. He approached the ambush site from downwind, pausing frequently to scan and listen. What he found stopped him cold. Bodies. His team's bodies arranged in a clearing laid out in a neat row. Wolf's hand tightened on his knife as he watched from concealment. 2 armed men stood guard while a third checked something on a tablet. Their uniforms carried no insignia, but their movements betrayed military training. The third man spoke, his voice carrying in the still morning air. Bao wants confirmation on all 6, count again. 5 confirmed, one of the guards replied. Lieutenant Sergeant, 2 specialists, 1 corporal. The staff sergeant is still missing. Then find him, the man with the tablet snapped. Bao says if we don't have a body, we don't have confirmation. We've searched the area. Blood trail ends at the river. Then search downstream. Bao says this one is dangerous. Special forces, Multiple tours. He won't die easy. Wolf committed. The exchange to memory. Bao, a name to the enemy. A target. The guards began another sweep, moving toward Wolf's position. He melted backward through the underbrush, circling to the opposite side of the clearing. As they moved away, he seized his chance. The bodies had been stripped of weapons but not equipment. Wolf moved from corpse to corpse with grim efficiency. From Rodriguez, a backup knife, maps, and a cache of energy bars. From Thompson, night vision equipment, damaged but repairable. From Chen, extra magazines that wouldn't fit Wolf's sidearm but could be valuable for trade or improvisation. He reached Kane last, steeling himself. The lieutenant's face was peaceful despite the violence that had claimed him. Wolf removed Kane's backup transponder, a device small enough to hide in a boot heel, designed for worst-case scenarios exactly like this one. As Wolf worked, his hand brushed against Kane's breast pocket. Something crinkled inside. Careful not to disturb the body's position, he extracted a folded piece of paper, coordinates and a date 3 days from now. A rendezvous point? Kane hadn't mentioned it during the mission brief. Another piece to the puzzle. Another reason to survive. Wolf heard the guards returning and disappeared into the jungle. New resources secured. By the time they returned to the clearing, it would appear undisturbed, the small items taken unnoticed. For 3 days, Wolf observed from a distance. The enemy established a forward operating base 2 kilometers from the ambush site. 14 men, rotating patrols, professional discipline. At their center, a lean, hard-faced commander who drove. His men with quiet authority. Nguyen Bao. Wolf studied him through scavenged binoculars, learning his patterns, the way he moved, how he commanded. Bao was different from the others, more cautious, more alert. When his men swept an area, Bao often lingered, studying the ground, examining broken twigs or disturbed soil that others missed. He wasn't just hunting, he was tracking. On the 3rd day, as dusk approached, Bao gathered 4 of his men. Through the binoculars, Wolf read the intensity in Bao's gestures as he pointed to a map. The American survived, Bao told them, his voice carrying on the evening air. He's watching us. You feel it, yes? The eyes in the jungle. His men shifted uncomfortably. He's wounded but dangerous, Bao continued. Special forces, recon. He knows how to disappear, how to kill silently. Tonight we hunt in pairs. No one goes alone. Wolf retreated to his hidden camp, processing what he'd learned. Bao was smarter than most. He sensed Wolf's presence even without concrete evidence. The game was evolving. The hunter recognized another predator in his territory. That night, crouched beneath a camouflage poncho as rain drummed against the jungle canopy, Wolf made his decision. He couldn't remain defensive. 14 against 1 meant he needed to change the equation. He needed to reduce their numbers while maximizing the psychological impact. He needed to become the ghost in their nightmares. An hour before dawn, Wolf moved into position above the enemy camp's latrine area. The rain had stopped, leaving the jungle glistening and heavy with moisture. Perfect conditions to mask sound and scent. He'd observed the patrol patterns long enough to identify their weaknesses. The 3-minute gap between perimeter checks. The predictable bathroom breaks after shift changes. When the replacement guard headed for the latrine area, Wolf was waiting. The man never saw what hit him. Wolf's arm snaked around his throat from behind, cutting off both air and blood flow with practiced precision. The struggle lasted seconds. Silent, controlled, efficient. Wolf lowered the unconscious body to the ground and finished with his knife. 1 down. 13 remained. Wolf took the guard's rifle, ammunition, and radio before disappearing back into the jungle. By the time the body was discovered, he was a kilometer away, hidden in the upper branches of a massive banyan tree, listening to the panicked radio chatter. Secure the perimeter. 2-man teams, sweep in expanding circles. Throat cut, Tran didn't even fire his weapon. And then Bao's voice, calm amid the chaos. He's telling us something. This wasn't just a kill. This was a message. Wolf allowed himself a grim smile. Bao understood. For the next 2 days, the enemy camp transformed into a fortress of paranoia. No one moved alone. Floodlights illuminated the perimeter at night. Patrols doubled, but Wolf was patient. He watched. He waited. He adapted. On the third night after his first kill, opportunity presented itself. A 2-man patrol moving along the river's edge separated briefly to check different areas. Wolf took the left flank soldier quickly, then used the man's radio to lure his partner into an ambush. 2 more down. 11 remained. By morning, the camp was in disarray. Wolf watched through binoculars as Bao gathered his remaining men, their faces tense with fear. Even from a distance, Wolf could see the shift in their demeanor, the furtive glances into the jungle, the trembling hands on weapons. The hunter had become the hunted, and they knew it. All except Bao, whose expression remained impassive as he addressed his men.
"He's one man," Bao told them. "One wounded man against all of us." "He's a ghost," one of the soldiers protested. "3 men gone without a sound." "Not a ghost," Bao countered. "A wolf, and wolves can be trapped." The word sent a chill through
Wolf as he watched Bao outline a new strategy. They would fall back to more defensible terrain, concentrating their forces rather than spreading out. They would set traps, not for a fleeing target, but for a stalking predator. Wolf retreated to reconsider his approach. Bao was adapting, learning, countering. This was no longer a simple hunt. It had evolved into a duel between equals. As dusk fell, Wolf checked Kane's coordinates again. The rendezvous point was less than 5 kilometers south, scheduled for tomorrow. Who had Kane planned to meet? Was it connected to Wren's betrayal? Wolf stared at the paper, conflict churning inside him. Vengeance pulled him toward Bao's camp. Answers beckoned from the rendezvous point. Both paths carried risk, but only one might explain why his brothers had died. He made his decision. Tonight, he would strike once more at Bao's men, not to kill but to capture. He needed information that only the enemy could provide. As full darkness enveloped the jungle, Wolf moved toward the enemy camp. The perimeter was well lit now, guards posted, in overlapping fields of fire. But Wolf had identified the weakness in their defense, their water supply route. Every 4 hours, 2 men made the trip to the nearby stream to refill containers. Wolf positioned himself midway along the path, concealed in dense underbrush. The approaching footsteps told him his timing was perfect. 2 men, moving cautiously, weapons ready but attention divided by the water jugs they carried. Wolf struck as they passed, taking the rear man first with a swift blow to the back of the head. The front man spun at the sound, but too late. Wolf was already on him, driving him to the ground, knife pressed against his throat. Not a sound. Wolf growled in the local dialect. "Or you join your friends." The man's eyes widened in recognition and fear. "American ghost," he whispered. "Tell me about Bao," Wolf commanded, pressing the knife just hard enough to draw blood. "Why did you ambush my unit?" "Orders," the man gasped. "Bao follows orders." "Whose orders?" The man hesitated. Wolf increased pressure on the knife. "I don't know," the man insisted. "Bao received transmission. Special target, special location. Your unit." Wolf's mind raced. "This transmission, who sent it?" "Not for us to know. Bao speaks privately, says only this mission comes from someone very important, someone who pays American dollars." The pieces clicked into place, reinforcing Mako's dying accusation. Someone had sold them out. Someone with access to their mission details, their routes, their communications. Someone like Captain Elias Wren. "One more question," Wolf said. "What happens when you finish this mission?" The man swallowed against the knife blade. "Extraction. Tomorrow night. Helicopter comes for Bao at Old Temple Ruins." Wolf committed the information to memory. "How many men left with Bao now?" 8. Plus Bao. 9 targets. 1 extraction point. 1 chance to confront the man who'd executed his unit. A sudden noise in the underbrush alerted Wolf seconds before gunfire erupted around him. He rolled away from his captive, feeling the burn as a bullet grazed his shoulder. Bao had anticipated him, set a trap within a trap. Wolf fired twice toward the muzzle flashes before diving into deeper cover. More shots followed, tracking his movement. He crawled through mud and roots, using the darkness and his knowledge of the terrain to break contact. When he finally stopped a kilometer from the ambush point, Wolf assessed the damage. The bullet had carved a furrow across his left shoulder, painful but not debilitating. More concerning, they'd been waiting for him. Bao had predicted his move. The game had changed again. Both hunter and hunted now, Wolf faced a critical decision. The rendezvous point Kane had documented or the temple extraction site where Bao would be tomorrow night? Answers or vengeance? As dawn broke over the jungle, Wolf made his choice. He would go to Kane's coordinates first. If there were answers about Wren's betrayal, he needed them before confronting Bao. Understanding why his brothers died had become as important as avenging them. Wolf cleaned his wound and checked his weapons, preparing for the journey south. The dog tags of his fallen teammates clinked softly around his neck, 5 reminders of why failure wasn't an option. For the first time since the ambush, Wolf allowed himself to recognize what was happening inside him. The disciplined soldier was receding, giving way to something more primal. Each kill had awakened something ancient in his blood, the instinct of a predator claiming its territory, marking its prey. "You called me a wolf," he murmured to the absent Bao. "You have no idea how right you are." With that thought, Staff Sergeant Lucas Mercer shouldered his scavenged rifle and disappeared into the jungle, moving south toward answers. And the next phase of his hunt. The coordinates led Wolf to a clearing dominated by the skeletal remains of what had once been a colonial outpost. Crumbling stone walls, half reclaimed by vines and moss, formed a rough perimeter around a central structure, still partially intact. The perfect location for a covert meeting, isolated, defensible, with multiple escape routes. Wolf approached with caution, every sense alert for signs of ambush. The memories of his unit's slaughter remained raw, informing each movement, each decision. He circled the ruins twice before entering, confirming no one waited inside. The rendezvous was scheduled for 1400 hours, 20 minutes from now. Wolf positioned himself in the partial second story of the main building, where deteriorating walls provided both concealment and a commanding view of all approaches. As he settled into position, Wolf extracted Kane's folded paper once more. The Hubert coordinates matched this location precisely, but something about the handwriting nagged at him. After years of field operations alongside Kane, Wolf had seen countless mission notes in the lieutenant's neat, precise script. This was different, slightly looser, less disciplined. Not Kane's handwriting. Someone else had given him these coordinates. Wolf tucked the paper away as movement at the jungle's edge caught his attention. A solitary figure emerged from the tree line, civilian by his movements, carrying no visible weapons. Middle-aged, balding, with the weathered complexion of someone who'd spent years in the region, the man scanned the clearing nervously before approaching the ruins. "Lieutenant Kane," the man called softly, his accented English carrying in the still afternoon air. "I came as agreed." Wolf remained motionless, assessing. The man was alone, but that meant nothing. He could be bait, a distraction while others moved into position. "Lieutenant," the man called again, moving further into the ruins. "I bring the information you requested. About Wren." The name electrified Wolf. He shifted position slightly, causing a small cascade of debris that drew the man's attention upward. The civilian froze. "You're not Kane." Wolf aimed his rifle directly at the man's chest. "Kane's dead. Ambushed 3 days ago." The color drained from the civilian's face. "All of them?" "All but me," Wolf confirmed, his voice coldly neutral. "Start talking. Who are you and what information about Wren?" "My name is Tran," the man replied, hands trembling as he raised them shoulder high. "I work as translator for military intelligence. Sometimes I hear things I shouldn't." "Like what?" "Like Captain Wren making private calls on unsecured channels. Like meetings with people he shouldn't meet." Tran swallowed hard. "Lieutenant Kane approached me 2 weeks ago. Said he had concerns about some operations. asked me to listen more carefully to Wren's communications. Wolf's mind raced. Kane had suspected something weeks before the ambush but hadn't shared his concerns with the unit. Why? What did you hear? Wolf demanded. 2 nights before your mission, Wren made call from his private quarters. I was working late transcribing. Reports nearby. Tran's eyes darted nervously around the clearing. He spoke of coordinates, patrol routes, your unit specifics, times, equipment, strength. Who was he talking to? I don't know name, but Wren called him Sir. Military or former military. They spoke of payment, significant amount transferred to offshore account. Wolf absorbed this. The confirmation of Mako's dying accusation hitting him with physical force. Wren had sold them out. Their own intelligence officer had deliberately sent them into an ambush. Why? Wolf asked, more to himself than to Tran. The translator answered anyway. I heard fragments only. Something about loose ends and insurance policy. Wren mentioned Kane specifically. Said Kane was asking questions, becoming problem. The pieces aligned with sickening clarity. Kane had been investigating Wren, perhaps uncovered something damning. The ambush wasn't just about eliminating a recon unit. It was about silencing Kane before he could expose whatever operation Wren was running. And the rest of Wolf's squad? Collateral damage. The information I brought, Tran continued, reaching slowly into his pocket and removing a small data drive. Recording of partial conversation. Not complete, but enough to prove Wren's betrayal. Wolf descended from his position, approaching Tran cautiously. The translator remained still as Wolf took the drive, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. Why? Help Kane? Wolf asked, tucking the drive into his pocket. Why risk yourself? Tran's eyes hardened. My brother was translator before me. Died in incident 3 years ago. Official report said enemy action. Later I find documents suggesting friendly fire covered up. American officer signed off on report. Wren? Tran nodded. So when Kane asked for help, I say yes. Wolf considered this information, weighing Tran's credibility. The specificity of his account aligned with what Wolf had experienced, what Mako had whispered with his dying breath. Do you know where Bao's extraction point is? Wolf asked. Temple ruins 10 kilometers northeast, Tran replied immediately. Tonight after dark. Helicopter comes for high-value targets only. The same information Wolf had extracted from his captive. Another confirmation. Does Wren know about this meeting? Wolf pressed. I don't think so. Kane was careful. We never met at base, never communicated directly. Tran hesitated. But if Wren orchestrated ambush, he may suspect Kane had outside contact, which meant Tran might be compromised as well. Wolf's tactical mind processed the implications rapidly. You need to disappear, he told the translator. If Wren realizes you were helping Kane, I have family in Coastal Village, Tran interrupted. Already arranged to visit them today, will not return to base. Wolf nodded, respecting the man's foresight. Good. Stay away as long as possible. Tran studied Wolf's face, taking in the dirt, blood, and cold determination. What will you do now, soldier? Get evidence. Find Wren. Wolf checked his weapons with mechanical precision. Make him pay. The recording will help, but may not be enough to prove conspiracy, Tran warned. Wren has powerful friends. I'm not interested in a court-martial, Wolf replied, his voice dropping to a predatory growl. Understanding dawned in Tran's eyes. He nodded once, then turned to leave. Wait, Wolf called. When Tran looked back, Wolf asked the question that had been gnawing at him. Was Kane involved in whatever Wren is doing? No, Tran said with certainty. Kane was investigator. He suspected illegal weapons transfers, black market deals using military resources. That's why Wren wanted him gone. Relief flooded through Wolf. Kane had died honorably, trying to expose corruption. The lieutenant deserved to be remembered that way. Tran departed, melting back into the jungle as silently as he'd appeared. Wolf remained in the ruins, processing everything he'd learned. The data drive felt heavier than its actual weight. laden with the truth behind his unit's destruction. He needed to hear that recording. But first he had a more immediate objective, the temple extraction point where Bao would be tonight. If Wolf could capture the enemy commander, he might extract additional confirmation of Wren's treachery, evidence no one could dismiss. Wolf left the ruins heading northeast, moving with renewed purpose. The raw grief that had driven him since the ambush had crystallized into something more focused, more dangerous. This wasn't just about vengeance anymore. It was about justice. For Kane, for Mako, for all of them. As the jungle swallowed him once more, Wolf allowed himself a moment to consider what he'd become over these past days. The disciplined soldier had given way to something more primal, a hunter who killed without hesitation, who existed in a moral gray area beyond military protocol or rules of engagement. Was he any different from the men he hunted? The question surfaced briefly before Wolf pushed it aside. There would be time for soul-searching later. For now, he needed to stay focused on the mission. The temple ruins came into view as dusk settled over the jungle. Ancient stone structures, partially reclaimed by vegetation, sprawled across a clearing large enough for helicopter operations. Wolf surveyed the area from concealment, counting heads, 8 men plus Bao, just as his captive had indicated. They had established a defensive perimeter with lookouts positioned at key points. Wolf noted their fields of fire, the gaps in coverage, the rhythm of their patrol patterns. Professional, but predictable. Their confidence had returned now that they were preparing for extraction. Wolf was considering his approach when a familiar voice crackled from the radio he'd taken from one of Bao's men. Viper actual to ground team. Confirm status. Wolf froze. He knew that voice. Captain Elias Wren Bao responded immediately. Ground team ready for extraction. Area secure. Any sign of our missing friend? Wren's voice carried a tension Wolf had never heard before. Negative, Bao replied. No contact. In 12 hours. He's out there, Wren warned. Do not underestimate him. If he reaches the extraction point, eliminate him immediately. No witnesses, no survivors. Understood, Bao acknowledged. What about the package? Bring it. Confirmation codes and transfer. Details remain unchanged. The transmission ended, leaving Wolf with cold certainty. Wren wasn't just expecting Wolf might be alive. He was actively coordinating with Bao to ensure Wolf never made it out of the jungle. And whatever package they referred to was valuable enough to warrant a covert extraction. Wolf circled the temple ruins, searching for the best angle of approach. The sun had set completely now, leaving only faint moonlight filtering through clouds. Perfect conditions for what he had planned. On the eastern perimeter, Wolf identified his target, an isolated lookout positioned near dense vegetation. He approached silently from behind, knife ready. One quick movement and the man collapsed without a sound. Wolf dragged the body into cover, then took up the dead man's position, radio at hand. Eastern perimeter clear, he reported, perfectly, mimicking the cadence and accent he'd observed from Bao's men. No response came, exactly as expected. The routine check-in had established his presence as legitimate. Now he could move deeper into their defensive position. Wolf advanced methodically, using shadows and natural cover. His objective was simple: locate Bao and the package, neutralize the immediate threat, and extract information. He had eliminated 2 more guards and reached the central temple structure when floodlights suddenly illuminated the entire area. A voice boomed from speakers mounted on perimeter posts. Staff Sergeant Mercer. Bao's voice amplified and calm. We've been expecting you. Wolf dropped to a crouch behind a fallen pillar as gunfire erupted from multiple positions. They'd known. He was coming. But how? The answer came in a burst of static from his stolen radio. All units, intruder confirmed. A voice Wolf didn't recognize. Fell for the false extraction plan. Converge on Central Temple. A trap within a trap. The radio transmissions had been staged, the extraction point a fabrication designed to lure him in. Wolf swore under his breath as bullets chipped stone inches from his head. He was surrounded, outgunned with no clear escape route. Years of training took over as he assessed his options: stay and die, or create chaos and exploit the confusion. He chose chaos. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. From his pack, Wolf extracted his final resource: grenade salvaged from one of Bao's men. He pulled the pin, counted 2 seconds, then hurled it toward the nearest floodlight. The explosion ripped through the night, plunging a section of the ruins into darkness. In the momentary confusion, Wolf moved. Low, fast, unpredictable. Gunfire tracked his previous position as he circled behind a stone structure, flanking one of the firing positions. 2 quick shots eliminated that threat. "He's moving west," someone shouted. "Cut him off at the perimeter." Wolf moved in the opposite direction, exploiting their misdirection. 3 more shots, 3 more of Bao's men down. The odds were evening, but time was against him. Eventually, they would coordinate effectively, or simply saturate the area with enough firepower to hit him. A bullet grazed his arm as he dove behind another section of ruins. Wolf returned fire, dropping another enemy combatant. 4 remaining plus Bao himself. "Enough game, Sergeant Mercer." Bao's voice again, closer now. "You've proven your skill, but this ends tonight." Wolf remained silent, conserving ammunition, calculating angles. Bao was trying to draw him out, get him to reveal his position. "Your Captain Wren was most specific," Bao continued, his voice moving methodically through the ruins. "He said you were exceptional, worth a significant bonus if eliminated." Wolf focused on the voice, tracking its movement. Bao was approaching from the south, using fallen columns as cover. "But he also said you were predictable," Bao added. "That your loyalty would be your weakness. That you would need answers about your men before escaping." Wolf's finger tensed on the trigger as Bao's outline appeared in the moonlight, moving with cautious confidence. He was right, Bao concluded. "And now," Wolf fired twice. The first shot went wide as Bao dove for cover with impressive speed. The second caught him in the leg, drawing a sharp cry of pain. Wolf advanced, weapon trained on the fallen commander. "Don't move," he ordered, voice cold and precise. "Next one goes through your head." Bao stared up at him, clutching his bleeding leg. Despite the pain, his eyes remained calculating. "My men will kill you before you can question me." "Your men are dead or scattered," Wolf replied. "It's just you and me now, and I want answers." A slow smile spread across Bao's face. "You think so?" Too late, Wolf sensed movement behind him. Something hard struck the back of his head, sending him sprawling. His rifle clattered away as stars exploded across his vision. He rolled instinctively, narrowly avoiding a second blow. 2 more of Bao's men had flanked him while Bao kept him distracted. Amateur mistake. Wolf cursed his overconfidence as he scrambled to his feet, drawing his sidearm. 1 shot dropped the closest attacker. The second man charged, knocking the weapon from Wolf's hand. They grappled in the dirt, trading blows with desperate intensity. Wolf felt his strength waning, days of limited food, constant movement, and accumulated injuries taking their toll. With a surge of effort born from pure survival instinct, Wolf broke his opponent's hold and delivered a vicious strike to the man's throat. As his attacker fell back, gasping, Wolf reclaimed his sidearm and fired once, ending the threat. He spun back toward Bao, only to find the commander gone. A blood trail led toward the jungle's edge. Wolf pursued, ignoring the pounding in his skull, the burning in his muscles. He couldn't let Bao escape, not when he was this close to confirmation of Wren's betrayal. The blood trail led 50 meters into the jungle before disappearing at a small stream. Wolf scanned the area, searching for signs of passage. Nothing. Bao had somehow masked his trail or found transportation waiting. Wolf slammed his fist against a tree in frustration. So close. He'd been so close to answers only to lose his primary source of intelligence. As he turned back toward the temple ruins, something caught his eye, a small canvas bag half hidden beneath fallen leaves where Bao's blood trail ended. Wolf approached cautiously, checking for traps before retrieving it. Inside, a satellite phone, a set of encryption codes, and a thumb drive labeled Operation Stillwater. The package Bao and Wren had discussed. Wolf stared at the contents, a cold realization settling over him. He'd missed capturing Bao, but perhaps he'd gained something more valuable. Hard evidence of whatever operation had cost his unit their lives. He pocketed the items and melted back into the jungle, moving away from the temple ruins as the sound of approaching helicopters growled in the distance. Extraction was coming, but not for Bao, and certainly not for Wolf. Dawn found him miles away, hidden in the hollow of a massive fallen tree. Wolf's head throbbed where he'd been struck, and fresh bruises mottled his arms and torso. He'd pushed his body beyond reasonable limits, surviving on instinct and training. But even the most elite soldiers had breaking points, and Wolf was approaching his. He extracted the satellite phone from Bao's bag, examining it carefully. Military grade, encrypted, with recent call history cleared. The thumb drive was more promising, but he had no way to access its contents in the jungle. The encryption codes, however, were immediate intelligence. Written in alphanumeric sequences, they included frequencies, call signs, and authentication protocols. Wolf recognized the format, similar to what his own unit used for secure communications, which meant these codes could potentially give him access to the same communication channels Wren used to coordinate with Bao. Wolf activated the satellite phone, using the encryption codes to bypass security protocols. If Wren was monitoring communications, this would alert him. But at this point, Wolf was beyond caring about stealth. He needed answers more than safety. He entered the primary frequency listed in the codes and waited. Static crackled before a voice responded. Authentication required. Not Wren, but someone with a similar military cadence. Wolf input the first authentication code from the sequence. A pause then. Authentication accepted. Identify. Wolf mimicked Bao's clipped accent. Ground Team Alpha, status report. Ground Team Alpha reported lost contact 6 hours ago, came the suspicious response. Identify yourself properly or face countermeasures. Wolf abandoned the pretense. This is Staff Sergeant Lucas Mercer, sole survivor of Reconnaissance Unit Alpha 1. Silence stretched for several seconds before a new voice came on the line. The voice Wolf had been hunting. Mercer. Captain Elias Wren sounded both surprised and calculating. You're proving remarkably difficult to eliminate. Why? Wolf demanded, raw emotion bleeding through his professional demeanor. Why send us into that ambush? What was worth the lives of 5 good men? It's complicated, Sergeant, Wren replied, his tone almost conversational. Nothing personal, I assure you. Your unit was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or more accurately, Lieutenant Kane was asking the wrong questions about the wrong operation. Operation Stillwater, Wolf stated, watching the gambit. Land as Wren's sharp intake of breath carried over the connection. Where did you hear that name? Wren's voice had lost its casual edge. I have the package Bao was supposed to deliver, Wolf informed him, pressing his advantage. Codes, protocols, and a very interesting thumb drive. Another long silence before Wren responded, his voice cold with controlled fury. You have no idea what you're involved in, Mercer. This goes beyond you, beyond your unit. Return the package, and perhaps we can discuss terms. The only terms I'm interested in involve you paying for what you did, Wolf growled. 5 men, Wren. 5 brothers who trusted you. Casualties of war, Wren dismissed. Don't pretend your hands are clean, Sergeant. How many have you killed? Since the ambush, 6, 8? You're no different from me, we both eliminate obstacles. The comparison struck Wolf like a physical blow. Was Wren right? Had Wolf become just another killer, no better than the man who'd betrayed his unit? No. There was a difference between hunting those responsible for murdering his team and orchestrating the slaughter of his own men for profit. Here are my terms, Wolf stated, his voice hardening. I'm coming for you, Wren. Not for a court-martial, not for a trial. I'm coming to deliver the same justice you dealt my unit. You'll never make it out of that jungle alive, Wren warned. Every asset we have is being redirected to find you. Every exit point is watched. You're already dead, Sergeant. You just don't know it yet. We'll see, Wolf replied before terminating the connection. He destroyed the satellite phone immediately, crushing it beneath a rock and scattering the components. The thumb drive and encryption codes he secured in a waterproof pouch, along with the data drive Tran had provided. Together, they might contain enough evidence to expose whatever operation had led to his unit's sacrifice. But first, he needed to survive. Wren wasn't bluffing. Every asset in the region would be hunting Wolf now. His options for extraction had narrowed dramatically. As Wolf gathered his remaining supplies and prepared to move deeper into the jungle, he confronted the cold reality of his situation. He was no longer fighting just to avenge his unit or expose a traitor. He was fighting to stay alive long enough to deliver justice, and to do that, he would need to become something more than a soldier following a moral code. He would need to embrace fully what his enemies already feared: the ghost in the jungle, the predator that struck without warning, the hunter that could not be caught. Wolf checked his weapons one last time before disappearing into the dense foliage, leaving no trail to follow. Behind him, the dog tags of his fallen brothers clinked softly around his neck, a constant reminder of why failure wasn't an option. Somewhere beyond the jungle, Captain Elias Wren waited, and Wolf was coming for him, carrying the first solid clue to the conspiracy that had claimed his brothers' lives. The river whispered beneath Wolf's improvised blind. 3 days had passed since his confrontation with Wren over the satellite phone. 3 days of constant movement, minimal rest, and relentless vigilance. Helicopters had swept the region in overlapping patterns. Ground teams with tracking dogs had combed the jungle. Thermal imaging equipment had scanned the canopy after nightfall. They were hunting him with everything they had. And still, he remained a ghost. Wolf studied the camp across the river through his scope. After losing Bao at the temple ruins, he'd been forced to start the hunt anew. Intelligence gathered from observation posts and intercepted radio transmissions had finally led him here. A secondary extraction point where Bao was reportedly regrouping with his remaining forces. 6 men visible. Standard defensive formation. And in the center tent, occasionally visible through the flap, Nguyen Bao himself, his wounded leg now bandaged but still limiting his mobility. Wolf had spent a full day observing, noting patrol patterns, identifying weaknesses. Tonight he would strike, not to kill, but to capture. The pieces he'd gathered so far painted a disturbing picture of Operation Stillwater, but Bao could provide the context he needed to fully understand why his unit had been sacrificed. As dusk settled over the jungle, Wolf prepared methodically. He checked his weapons, a salvaged rifle with 34 remaining rounds, 2 sidearms, and his combat knife. His body had become a map of half-healed wounds and fresh bruises, but adrenaline and purpose would carry him through this mission. He waited until full darkness before crossing the river downstream from the camp, moving through chest-deep water, with his equipment held above his head. The current tugged at him, but years of training kept his movements controlled and deliberate. On the opposite bank, Wolf became one with the shadows, advancing in measured increments between the guards. Patrol routes. The camp's perimeter security was competent but predictable, a fatal flaw against an opponent like Wolf, who had evolved beyond conventional tactics into something approaching pure predatory instinct. He neutralized the first guard silently. A hand clamped over the man's mouth as his knife found its mark. The second fell moments later, never registering Wolf's presence before darkness claimed him. With the patrol gap created, Wolf infiltrated the camp perimeter, moving from shadow to shadow with fluid precision. Bao's tent stood 20 meters away. 2 guards flanked the entrance, alert but unaware of the threat already inside their defensive line. Wolf considered his options, calculating angles and timing. A direct approach would trigger an alarm before he could reach Bao. He needed a distraction. From his pocket, Wolf extracted a small device salvaged from one of Bao's dead men, a signal flare. He retreated to the edge of the camp, placed it against an ammunition crate, and rigged a simple time delay igniter using items from his survival kit. Then he circled back toward Bao's tent, positioning himself for the moment the distraction deployed. The flare ignited with a hissing screech, casting brilliant red light across the camp as it shot skyward. The response was immediate. Shouts of alarm, men rushing toward the source, weapons raised. The guards at Bao's tent hesitated, torn between their duty to protect their commander and the apparent threat at the perimeter. In that moment of indecision, Wolf struck. 2 swift movements, 2 bodies crumpling to the ground. Then he was through the tent flap, weapon trained on the man inside. Bao sat on a field cot, his injured leg extended before him. A pistol lay beside him, within reach, but not in hand. His expression registered surprise, then something like grim amusement as he recognized his visitor. "Staff Sergeant Mercer," he said calmly, making no move toward the weapon. "I wondered when you would find me." "Hands where I can see them," Wolf ordered, advancing into the tent. "Move toward that pistol and you die." Bao raised his hands slowly. "If you came to kill me, you would have done so already. You want information?" Wolf secured the tent entrance, alert for sounds of returning guards. The distraction wouldn't hold them long. "Operation Stillwater," Wolf stated. "What is it? Why was my unit targeted?" Bao studied Wolf's face, seemingly untroubled by the rifle aimed at his chest. "You still don't understand what you're involved in, do you? Your Captain Wren has been very thorough in keeping you in the dark." "Wren is not my captain," Wolf growled. "Not anymore." "No," Bao agreed. "Now you are like me, a soldier betrayed by those he trusted." He gestured toward his wounded leg. "This? Not from your bullet. From my own commanders when I failed to eliminate you at the temple ruins." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe your side turned on you too?" "There are no sides in this, Sergeant Mercer." Bao's voice carried a bitter edge. "Only assets and obstacles. Your unit became obstacles to a very profitable operation. I became an obstacle when I failed to complete my mission cleanly." Outside, the commotion was dying down. Wolf had minutes, perhaps seconds, before the guards returned. "Talk faster," he ordered. "What is Operation Stillwater?" "A weapons pipeline," Bao replied. "American weapons diverted from official channels, sold to various interested parties in the region. Very profitable for those involved. Your Captain Wren is merely a middle manager. The operation goes much higher." Wolf processed this, connecting it to the information Tran had provided. "And my unit?" "Your Lieutenant Kane became suspicious, started asking questions, gathering evidence. Wren couldn't allow that to continue." Bao's eyes hardened. "My unit was contracted to eliminate the Yao problem. We were given your exact patrol route, communication frequencies, everything needed to ensure no survivors." "Contracted?" Wolf repeated, the word hanging heavy between them. "You're not regular military." "Private security," Bao confirmed. "Former special forces now working for whoever pays. And American intelligence officers pay very well for deniable operations." The pieces aligned with sickening clarity. Wolf's unit hadn't been collateral damage in some larger conflict. They'd been specifically targeted for elimination, their deaths arranged by their own command structure to protect a black market weapons operation. "The thumb drive from the temple," Wolf pressed. "What's on it?" "Transaction records, contact protocols, evidence your lieutenant was seeking." Bao's expression remained carefully neutral. "Enough to expose the entire operation if it reached the right people." Wolf's grip tightened on his rifle as the implications settled over him. Kane had been close to exposing Wren, close enough that the captain had arranged his execution and the elimination of any witnesses. Before Wolf could ask another question, shouts outside indicated the guards had discovered their fallen comrades. Time had run out. "They'll kill us both," Bao stated matter-of-factly. "You for obvious reasons. Me because I've become a liability. A failed commander who knows too much." Wolf assessed his options rapidly. He could eliminate Bao and attempt to fight his way out alone, or... The first bullets tore through the tent fabric as Wolf made his decision. He tossed Bao's pistol back to him. "Temporary alliance," Wolf proposed tersely. We both want to survive. We both have reasons to want Wren exposed. Bao caught the weapon smoothly, a grim smile crossing his features. The enemy of my enemy. For now, Wolf confirmed, already moving toward the rear of the tent. He sliced through the canvas with his knife, creating an exit just as the tent flap was thrown open. Wolf fired twice, dropping the first man through the entrance. Bao's pistol barked in concert, catching a second attacker in the chest. Then they were both through the improvised exit, moving in tandem with the coordination of experienced combat veterans. The river, Bao directed, firing at pursuers as they retreated. I have a cache downriver, weapons, supplies. Wolf provided covering fire as Bao limped toward the tree line, his wounded leg clearly hampering his movement. 4 attackers down, but more converging from around the camp. They're not my men anymore, Bao explained between labored breaths as they reached the jungle's edge. Wren sent a new commander after I failed, someone loyal only to money. Wolf grabbed Bao's arm, supporting him as they pushed deeper into the vegetation. Gunfire pursued them, bullets splintering bark and shredding leaves around their position. How far to the river? Wolf demanded, calculating their dwindling odds. 200 meters, Bao replied, grimacing with each step. Northeast. Wolf guided their retreat, using natural cover and the darkness to break their pursuers' line of sight. Years of jungle warfare had taught him to move like a shadow, and even with Bao's injury slowing them, they maintained enough pace to stay ahead of the immediate threat. The sound of rushing water grew louder as they approached the river. Bao directed them toward a fallen tree whose massive root system created a natural fortress overlooking the water. Cache is beneath the roots, he explained as they took cover. Waterproof case anchored to the riverbed. Wolf provided security, while Bao retrieved the hidden supplies, an impressive arsenal including 2 automatic rifles, ammunition, grenades, and basic medical equipment. The cache confirmed Bao's status as a professional contractor rather than conventional military. This level of preparation spoke to someone who never fully trusted his employers. They'll have thermal, Bao noted, distributing equipment between them. Standard procedure for high-value target acquisition. Wolf nodded, already formulating a counter-strategy. River masks heat signatures. We move downstream, remain partially submerged. With my leg, I won't move fast enough, Bao stated pragmatically. You go. I'll create a diversion. Wolf studied the man who days earlier had been his sworn enemy. Tactically, leaving Bao behind made sense. The wounded commander would slow him down, potentially costing him his life. But Bao still held valuable information about Wren's operation, and something else gave Wolf pause, a recognition of himself in the betrayed commander's eyes. They were both victims of the same conspiracy, pawns sacrificed in a game played by men like Wren. Before Wolf could respond, movement in the undergrowth alerted them to approaching threats. Their pursuers had picked up their trail, closing the distance rapidly. Decision time, Sergeant, Bao said quietly, checking his weapon. Wolf made his choice, based not on emotion but on cold tactical assessment. We both go. Your intel is too valuable to lose. For the first time, genuine surprise registered on Bao's face. Then he nodded, accepting Wolf's decision. They entered the water as the first thermal scanner swept the area behind them. The river's current provided both concealment and transportation, carrying them downstream as they used submerged roots and rocks for handholds. Only their faces remained above water, and even those they submerged periodically when helicopters passed overhead. For nearly an hour they traveled this way, putting crucial distance between themselves and their pursuers. When Wolf finally signaled to exit the river, they were several kilometers from the camp in a section of jungle thick enough to provide adequate concealment. Bao collapsed against a tree trunk, his wounded leg finally giving out. Wolf assessed the injury clinically. The original bullet wound from their encounter at the temple ruins had reopened, compounded by new trauma during their escape. Not good, Wolf muttered, extracting medical supplies from their salvaged gear. I've had worse, Bao replied, though the pallor of his skin suggested otherwise. Wolf cleaned and redressed the wound, administering antibiotics from the cache's medical kit. As he worked, the strangeness of the situation struck him, tending to the wounds of a man who a week ago he'd been determined to kill. "Your unit," Bao said suddenly, breaking the silence. "They were good men?" Wolf's hands stilled momentarily. "The best, brothers, not just soldiers." Bao nodded, understanding in his eyes. "My original team, before this contract, they were the same. Family. What happened to them?" "Operation went wrong. Extraction denied." Bao's voice remained steady, but old pain shadowed his features. "Official report blamed equipment failure. Reality was budget concerns. Cheaper to write off a team than extract under difficult conditions." Wolf recognized the pattern. The same callous calculation that had condemned his own unit. Soldiers reduced to assets on a spreadsheet, their lives valued only in terms of operational costs and benefits. "After that, I became like you are now," Bao continued. "A ghost. A weapon seeking targets." His gaze met Wolf's directly. "It hollows you out eventually, turns you into something else." Wolf secured the final bandage before responding. "I'm not like you. I'm not hunting for money." "No," Bao agreed. "For vengeance, for justice, noble causes." A humorless smile crossed his features. "I told myself the same when I started, but killing doesn't fill the emptiness, it just makes it larger." Wolf packed away the medical supplies, uncomfortable with how accurately Bao had assessed his transformation over the past week. He had become something different in the jungle, something colder, more lethal, less bound by the military, code he'd once followed without question. "We need to move before dawn," Wolf said, changing the subject. "Can you walk?" Bao tested his leg, grimacing. "Not quickly. Not far." "Then we find a defensive position and wait until you can." Wolf began assessing their surroundings. "I still need what you know about Wren and Operation Stillwater." "And after you have what you need?" Bao asked. "What happens to me?" The question hung between them, the logical conclusion of their temporary alliance. Wolf had no answer that satisfied both his tactical mind and whatever remained of his moral core. "We'll deal with that when we get there," he finally replied. "For now, we both want to stay alive, and we both want Wren exposed." Bao accepted this with a slight nod. "Fair enough. There's an abandoned village 5 kilometers east. Locals evacuated years ago during earlier conflicts. Good defensible position, off main patrol routes." Wolf considered the suggestion, weighing risks against benefits. An abandoned structure would provide better cover than the jungle, but also created a fixed position that could be surrounded if discovered. "We'll move at first light," he decided. "Rest while you can." As Bao settled back against the tree trunk, Wolf positioned himself where he could monitor both their surroundings and his unlikely ally. Trust wasn't part of the equation, merely a mutual recognition that their survival chances improved together rather than separate. "You're Captain Wren," Bao said quietly, his eyes closed. "He's merely a node in a larger network. Taking him down won't end Operation Stillwater. One problem at a time," Wolf replied. "Wren first, then whoever stands behind him." Bao opened his eyes, studying Wolf's expression. "You remind me of myself years ago, before I learned how the game is really played." "This isn't a game, it is to them," Bao countered. "Men like Wren, like the ones who command him. They move pieces on a board. We are those pieces, Sergeant. Expendable when necessary, sacrificed for strategic advantage." Wolf had no response to this cold assessment. His worldview had always been simpler: duty, loyalty, brotherhood. The concept of commanding officers deliberately sacrificing their own men for profit violated everything he'd believed about the military institution he'd served for 20 years. As dawn approached, casting gray light through the canopy, Wolf reflected on Bao's words. If this conspiracy reached higher than Wren, how far did it extend? How many were involved? And what chance did one betrayed soldier have against such an operation? The weight of the task ahead settled over Wolf like a physical burden. He'd begun this journey seeking simple vengeance for his fallen brothers. Now he faced something far more complex, a systemic corruption that treated soldiers as disposable assets, that turned military resources into private profit streams. Bao stirred, reading Wolf's expression with uncanny accuracy. Now you begin to understand the true enemy, Sergeant Mercer. Not me. Not even Wren, really. But the system that enables men like him to thrive while soldiers like your brothers die. Wolf checked his weapons methodically, a ritual that helped focus his thoughts. Then we changed the system, one piece at a time. Bao's expression suggested he found Wolf's determination both admirable and naive. Nevertheless, he prepared to move, testing his injured leg with a grimace. 5 kilometers east, Wolf confirmed, scanning the awakening jungle around them. Stay behind me, maintain spacing. If we encounter hostiles, I know how to move through hostile territory, Sergeant, Bao interrupted mildly. I've been doing it almost as long as you have. A reluctant respect had begun to form between them, professional recognition of capability, if not alignment of purpose. Wolf nodded acknowledgement before leading them eastward through the dense undergrowth. They traveled slowly, Bao's injury forcing frequent rest stops. Wolf remained vigilant, aware that helicopters would resume search patterns with daylight. Their earlier river escape had broken the thermal trail, but conventional tracking methods could still lead pursuers to their location. By mid-morning, the abandoned village came into view, a cluster of decaying structures reclaimed by jungle vegetation. Wolf motioned for Bao to remain concealed while he conducted a reconnaissance sweep, checking for signs of recent occupation or surveillance equipment. The village appeared genuinely abandoned, with nature steadily erasing human presence. Wolf identified a defensible structure near the center, a former meeting hall with thick stone walls, multiple exit points, and elevated positions for observation. He signaled Bao forward. Clear, Wolf reported as the wounded commander limped into the building. We'll establish here. Rest your leg. Then we talk. Bao lowered himself onto a weathered wooden bench, his face drawn with pain and exhaustion. What do you want to know first, Sergeant? Everything, Wolf replied, securing the structure's entrances. Start with how you were contracted, how Wren made contact, what exactly was on that thumb drive from the temple. As Bao began his explanation, Wolf listened with intense focus, mentally assembling the pieces of Operation Stillwater. According to Bao, the operation had begun 3 years earlier, a small-scale diversion of weapons and equipment that gradually expanded into a sophisticated black market enterprise. Wren was a mid-level coordinator, reporting to at least 2 higher-ranking officers. Your Lieutenant Kane stumbled onto it while reviewing supply discrepancies, Bao explained. Initially, he thought it was simple clerical error. Then he noticed the pattern and started investigating, Wolf finished, which made him a threat. Bao nodded. Wren arranged the elimination contract through intermediaries. 3 other independent teams were approached before my unit accepted. The payment was substantial. The cold calculation behind his units, Death tightened Wolf's chest with renewed fury. The thumb drive? Transaction records, communication protocols, bank accounts. Bao's expression remained carefully neutral. Evidence that would implicate Wren and at least 2 superior officers. Possibly more. Wolf absorbed this, considering implications. Why would Wren risk keeping such incriminating evidence? Insurance, Bao replied simply. In operations like this, loyalty exists only as long as mutual destruction remains assured. Wren keeps evidence that could damage his superiors. They keep evidence that could damage him. A balance of threat that prevents betrayal. The pragmatic cynicism behind this arrangement struck Wolf as fundamentally alien to everything he'd believed about military service. Yet the evidence supported Bao's explanation. His unit's death had been a business decision, nothing more. Before Wolf could ask another question, Bao suddenly tensed, head tilting toward one of the windows. Wolf followed his gaze, instantly alert. Movement, Bao whispered. Northern approach. Organized formation. Wolf moved to a position where he could observe without being seen. Through gaps in the decaying wall, he identified the threat. A squad moving in tactical formation toward the village center. Their uniforms carried no markings, but their equipment and movement patterns matched the men from Bao's camp. They tracked us, Wolf stated, already calculating defensive options. Not us specifically, Bao corrected. This is a standard search pattern. Grid-by-grid clearance of potential hiding locations. Wolf counted 8 men in the visible squad, all heavily armed. Even with their combined combat experience, an 8-against-2 engagement with Bao injured presented poor odds. Options, Wolf asked, deferring to Bao's knowledge of their opponent's tactics. They'll clear each structure methodically, Bao replied. No rush, no risks. Standard procedure would be to secure perimeter, then building-by-building search. Wolf assessed their location within the meeting hall. Multiple exits, elevated firing positions, thick walls. Defensible, but ultimately a trap if surrounded. We need to move before they establish a complete perimeter, Wolf decided. Eastern exit. Leads to denser jungle. Bao nodded agreement, though his expression betrayed doubt about his ability to move quickly enough on his injured leg. I'll slow you down, he stated plainly. Better tactical decision to split up. Wolf considered this coldly. Bao was right. His chances of escape improved significantly without dragging a wounded companion. But Bao still held valuable intelligence about Operation Stillwater. Intelligence that might not survive if they separated. More than that, something in Wolf rebelled against abandoning a wounded ally, even one who had begun as an enemy. It felt too much like what Wren had done to his unit, sacrificing others for tactical advantage. We move together, Wolf decided. Eastern exit, use buildings as cover. If engaged, I'll create diversion while you reach the tree line. Surprise flickered across Bao's features before he nodded acceptance. They gathered their equipment quickly, moving toward the eastern exit as the search team began clearing the first structures on the village perimeter. They almost made it. As they crossed between buildings, a shout went up from their right flank. A second search team, unseen until now, had approached from the east, cutting off their planned escape route. Contact right, Wolf called, pushing Bao toward cover as gunfire erupted around them. They dove behind a low stone wall as bullets chipped away at their protection. Wolf returned fire in controlled bursts, dropping one attacker before the others found cover. 8 more, he reported to Bao. Plus the original team approaching from behind. Bao assessed their deteriorating position. They'll flank us within minutes. Wolf checked his ammunition. 2 magazines for the rifle, 1 for his sidearm. Not enough for a prolonged engagement against superior numbers. Southside, Wolf decided. Through the building, then break for heavy jungle. I'll lay covering fire. Bao nodded, readying his weapon. They moved in coordinated rushes through the abandoned structure, using interior walls for cover as bullets punched through rotting wood and vegetation around them. Wolf took position at a window, identifying targets through swirling dust and debris. 3 controlled bursts, 3 enemies down. The remainder pulled back, calling for support from the northern team. Now, Wolf ordered, covering Bao as the wounded commander limped toward the southern exit. They were halfway to the tree line when the world erupted around them. Hidden claymore mines, positioned by the search team as they advanced, detonated, in sequence, throwing earth and shrapnel in devastating waves. Wolf felt the impact like a sledgehammer to his side, driving him to the ground as white-hot pain exploded across his ribs. Through dust and confusion, he saw Bao similarly thrown. Blood streaming from fresh wounds along his right arm and shoulder. Disoriented but driven by survival instinct, Wolf crawled toward Bao, dragging him behind a fallen tree trunk as renewed. Gunfire sought their position. Blood soaked through Wolf's tattered uniform, his blood or Bao's, he couldn't tell. Status, Wolf gasped, fighting to clear his vision. Still functional, Bao replied through gritted teeth. You're hit badly. Wolf glanced down, noting shrapnel wounds across his left side. Adrenaline masked the worst of the pain, but he recognized the severity, possible internal damage, certain blood loss. Their position behind the log provided momentary shelter, but Wolf knew they had minutes at most before being overrun. The search teams were coordinating now, establishing a crossfire that would make any movement toward the jungle suicidal. Bao reached into his pocket, extracting a small device Wolf hadn't seen before. Last resort, he explained, showing Wolf what appeared to be a remote detonator. Had charges placed throughout village perimeter, insurance policy. Understanding dawned. You rigged the village before we arrived. Always prepare alternatives, Bao confirmed, especially when traveling with someone you don't fully trust. Wolf might have appreciated the tactical foresight under different circumstances. Now he merely calculated how to use this unexpected advantage. Charges are on northern approach primarily, Bao continued. We'll create confusion, perhaps enough for one of us to reach jungle. The implication hung between them. Enough for one, not both. With both now wounded, their chances of escaping together had dropped to near zero. You take it, Bao decided, pressing the detonator into Wolf's hand. Operation Stillwater continues if evidence doesn't reach right people. Your mission matters more. Wolf stared at the man who had executed his unit, who had hunted him through the jungle, and who now offered him the only chance of escape. The world had tilted on its axis, enemies becoming allies, certainties dissolving into moral ambiguities. The thumb drive, Wolf insisted. All the evidence you have. I need it. Bao extracted a small waterproof case from within his shirt, handing it to Wolf. Everything I know, names, dates, accounts, enough to expose them all. Wolf secured the case inside his own shirt before asking his final question. Why help me now, after everything? Because Wren and his kind killed my brothers too, Bao replied, simply. Different time, different place, same betrayal. His eyes met Wolf's with grim understanding. We are both ghosts now, Sergeant Mercer. The only difference is you still believe in justice. Shouted commands indicated the search teams were preparing their final approach. Time had run out. Bao readied his weapon with calm determination. On my signal, detonate charges and move southwest. Heavy undergrowth provides best concealment. Don't stop. Don't look back. Wolf checked his own weapon, mind calculating the narrow window of opportunity the explosion would provide. Bao, he said. The strange alliance culminating in this final moment. If I make it out, you will make them pay. Bao finished with quiet certainty. That is enough. As the search teams began their advance from multiple directions, Bao fired, a sustained burst that forced them momentarily into cover. Now, he shouted, continuing to provide covering fire as Wolf activated the detonator. The northern perimeter erupted in sequential explosions, throwing men and debris skyward as confusion shattered the coordinated advance. Wolf launched himself toward the jungle, ignoring the tearing pain in his side, the warm flow of blood down his ribs. Behind him, Bao maintained a steady rate of fire, drawing attention away from Wolf's escape route. The wounded commander had positioned himself as the sacrifice, one final tactical decision to ensure the mission's success. Wolf reached the tree line as the firing behind him intensified, then abruptly ceased. He didn't look back, honoring Bao's final instruction. The jungle swallowed him once more as he pushed through pain and exhaustion, driven by the weight of the evidence against his chest and the dog tags of his fallen brothers around his neck. Bao's words echoed in his mind as he moved deeper into the protective shadows of the vegetation. We are both ghosts now. It was true. Staff Sergeant Lucas Wolf Mercer had died with his unit in that ambush. What remained was something else. A weapon forged in betrayal, tempered by survival, and now aimed directly at the heart of Operation Stillwater. Captain Elias Wren would soon discover exactly what kind of ghost he had created. Forward operating base. Kingfisher rose from the jungle like an alien intrusion. Concrete barriers, razor wire, and watchtowers carving order from chaos. Wolf studied it from the ridgeline, his body hunched beneath a ghillie suit improvised from local vegetation. 72 hours since Bao's sacrifice. 72 hours of pain, fever, and determination as he'd pushed through the jungle toward this moment. The shrapnel wounds in his side had become infected despite his best efforts, sending waves of heat and cold through his body in alternating cycles. Wolf knew he was operating on borrowed time. his strength fading with each passing hour. But the intelligence Bao had provided led here, to the operational hub where Captain Elias Wren coordinated Operation Stillwater. Wolf had one chance to gather final confirmation before his body failed him. Nightfall brought a tropical downpour. That worked to Wolf's advantage, reducing visibility and masking sound as he approached the perimeter. Standard security protocols were in effect. Rotating guard posts, overlapping fields of fire, motion sensors at key approaches. But Wolf had spent 20 years learning how to bypass exactly these kinds of defenses, and desperation had honed his skills to a razor's edge. He identified his entry point where a drainage culvert passed beneath the perimeter barrier. The recent rainfall had swollen the runoff channel, creating a tight but navigable passage. Wolf submerged himself completely, using the rushing water to carry him beneath the fence line, emerging inside the compound near a cluster of storage containers that provided immediate cover. His feverish mind cataloged the base layout through the rain. Command center to the north, barracks to the east, motor pool to the west. According to Bao's intelligence, Wren would be operating from a secure communications suite in the administrative building adjacent to the command center. Wolf moved like a shadow among the containers, using the storm's fury as cover. Each motion was measured, deliberate, conserving his waning strength for essential movement. The dog tags of his fallen brothers hung cold against his chest, a constant reminder of what was at stake. 2 perimeter guards passed within feet of his position, their attention focused on staying dry rather than detecting infiltrators. Wolf remained motionless until they moved on, then advanced toward the administrative building. A keycard entry system protected the main door, an obstacle Wolf bypassed by following a distracted communications officer who held the door for what he assumed was a fellow soldier hurrying in from the rain. Once inside, Wolf navigated the corridors with the confidence of someone who belonged there. Military facilities followed predictable layouts, and he had spent his career developing an intuitive understanding of their flow. He identified the secure communications suite by its reinforced door and dedicated guard, a young specialist whose alertness had been dulled by routine. Wolf didn't engage the guard. Instead, he positioned himself in an adjacent maintenance closet, where a ventilation access panel provided both audio surveillance capability and a protected observation point through a small gap in the ceiling tiles. He didn't wait long before voices carried through the ventilation system, confirmation from Task Force Delta. A voice Wolf didn't recognize. Site has been cleared. No survivors at the village. And Bao's body? Wren's voice, immediately recognizable. Was it recovered? Affirmative, sir, along with 7 of his remaining team. No sign of Mercer. A moment of silence, then Wren's measured response. He's still out there, wounded according to the blood trails, but operational. Sir, with respect, it's been days. With his injuries and limited supplies. You don't know Mercer like I do, Wren interrupted sharply. 20 years of special operations experience, multiple survival scenarios. He's not dead until I see a body. Wolf allowed himself a grim satisfaction at Wren's assessment. The captain had always recognized his capabilities, if not his humanity. What? About Operation Stillwater? The other voice asked. The missing data package still hasn't been recovered. Contingency protocols are in effect, Wren replied. All transactions suspended. Cutout protocols activated. If Mercer somehow makes it back to friendly forces, the package contains nothing that can be definitively traced back to us. And if he doesn't? Then we resume operations once his status is confirmed. The market doesn't disappear because of one loose end. Wren's voice hardened. General Davidson wants this resolved quickly. The quarterly profits exceed 5 million, and our partners are getting nervous. Wolf's feverish mind latched onto the name. General Davidson. A direct connection to command level, confirming Bao's assertion that the operation extended well beyond Wren. The door to the communications suite opened, and Wolf tensed as footsteps approached. Specialist, I'll be back in 30. No interruptions unless it's Colonel Hayes or above. Yes, sir. Wolf remained motionless as Wren passed directly beneath his hiding place, then made his decision. If he waited for Wren to return, His deteriorating physical condition might compromise his abilities. Better to secure additional evidence now and extract before his body failed him completely. He shifted position, preparing to drop into the now vacant communication suite when the maintenance closet door suddenly opened. A startled maintenance worker stared up at him, taking in the camouflaged face, the bloody uniform, the feral intensity in Wolf's eyes. What the? Wolf moved with trained efficiency, clamping a hand over the man's mouth and applying precise pressure to the carotid artery. The worker struggled briefly before unconsciousness claimed him. Wolf lowered the limp form gently to the floor, calculating the new timeline. Minutes, not hours, before his presence would be discovered. He dropped into the communications suite, immediately securing the door from within. The specialist guarding the entrance reacted instantly, reaching for his sidearm. Wolf closed the distance before the weapon cleared its holster, neutralizing the guard with a swift strike that rendered him unconscious. Working quickly, Wolf accessed the communications terminal with credentials from Bao's intelligence package. Operation Stillwater's data appeared before him: transaction records, communication logs, account transfers. Wolf extracted a small device from his gear, a modified data transfer unit capable of bypassing standard security protocols. He connected it to the system, initiating a complete data dump of all Stillwater files. As the download progressed, Wolf searched the physical space, locating a hidden safe behind a tactical map. Using the access code from Bao's intelligence, he opened it to reveal a physical ledger and several satellite phones. Analog backups for a digital operation, insurance against electronic compromise. Wolf photographed the ledger pages with a compact camera, documenting names, dates, and amounts that corroborated everything Bao had revealed. Then he pocketed one of the satellite phones, direct evidence connecting Wren to the operation. The data transfer completed just as shouts erupted in the corridor outside. Wolf's intrusion had been discovered. He disconnected his device, securing it alongside the other evidence, and assessed his escape options. The ventilation system offered a route, but his weakened condition made it uncertain. The door provided directness but guaranteed confrontation. Wolf chose a third option: the window overlooking the side of the building, where the continuing storm would provide both cover and a water landing in the flooded assembly area below. Wolf had just prepared the window for exit when the communication suite door burst open. Captain Elias Wren stood in the doorway, sidearm raised, expression shifting from anger to disbelief as he recognized the intruder. "Mercer," Wren breathed, genuine shock briefly overtaking his professional demeanor. "You look like hell." Wolf assessed his former commander with cold detachment. Wren appeared as he always had: crisp uniform, precise posture, the very image of military professionalism. Nothing in his appearance suggested the corruption that had led him to sacrifice Wolf's entire unit. "General Davidson," Wolf stated, watching confirmation flicker in Wren's eyes. "How high does it go, Captain? How many involved in selling us out?" Wren's weapon remained trained on Wolf's center mass. "You don't understand the bigger picture, Sergeant. Operation Stillwater fills critical funding gaps, supports operations that Congress would never approve." "Spare me the patriotic justification," Wolf growled. "You sold weapons on the black market and killed American soldiers to cover it up." "Necessary sacrifices," Wren countered. "Kane was asking questions, gathering evidence. He would have exposed everything. So you eliminated him, and my entire unit as collateral damage." "Not my first choice," Wren admitted with disturbing candor. "But operations of this magnitude require difficult decisions. You, of all people, should understand that, Mercer." Wolf's hand inched toward his own weapon, calculating angles and timing. "I understand loyalty. I understand duty. What you did was treason." Wren's expression hardened. "What I did was pragmatic. The system doesn't run on ideals, Sergeant. It runs on money and power." "And the lives of soldiers like my brothers?" Wolf demanded, grief and rage sharpening his words. "Just operational costs? In the larger equation?" "Yes." Wren's cold assessment confirmed everything Wolf had come to realize about the system he'd served for 20 years. Your team was one small sacrifice for an operation that funds dozens of critical missions. Wolf had heard enough. His hand moved toward his sidearm just as Wren fired. The bullet caught Wolf in the shoulder, spinning him against the window he'd prepared for escape. Glass shattered as Wolf crashed through it, plummeting into the flooded assembly area 3 stories below. The impact drove the air from his lungs, the cold water shocking his system. Gunfire erupted from above as Wren and base security fired at his position. Wolf used the murky water and driving rain as cover, swimming beneath the surface toward a drainage channel that led toward the perimeter. Alarms blared across the compound. Searchlights cut through the storm as Wolf emerged from the water near the motor pool, his wounded body screaming in protest. Blood streamed from the fresh bullet wound in his shoulder, mixing with rain and mud as he sought cover among the vehicles. Wolf knew the protocols that would now activate. The base would lock down. All personnel would mobilize for an intruder. Search and every exit would be sealed. His only advantage was the confusion created by the storm and the initial uncertainty about his location. He spotted his opportunity, a supply truck preparing to depart through the main gate. Its driver, engaged in a heated discussion with security about the lockdown protocols. Wolf moved like a ghost through the shadows, reaching the rear of the truck unseen. With the last of his strength, he hauled himself into the covered cargo area, concealing himself among crates of supplies. Minutes later, the truck received clearance to depart, an exception to the lockdown, likely due to mission-critical supplies. As it rumbled through the main gate, Wolf allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. He had penetrated a secure military facility, confirmed Wren's betrayal, and extracted with evidence that could expose Operation Stillwater. But his condition was deteriorating rapidly. The bullet wound in his shoulder combined with his existing injuries and infection had pushed his body to its absolute limits. Fever clouded his thoughts as the truck bounced along jungle roads, carrying him away from FOB Kingfisher. Wolf checked the evidence secured against his chest, the data device, the satellite phone, the photos of the ledger. Together with Bao's intelligence and the recording from Tran, he had assembled a comprehensive case against Wren, General Davidson, and whoever else participated in the operation that had claimed his brothers' lives. Now he faced his most difficult challenge, staying alive long enough to ensure that evidence reached the right people. Wren's words echoed in his feverish mind. The system doesn't run on ideals. It runs on money and power. Wolf had served that system faithfully for 20 years, believing in its fundamental righteousness despite its flaws. Now he found himself cast out, hunted by the very institution he'd sworn to defend. As the truck continued its journey away from the base, Wolf made his final calculation. He couldn't trust the normal chain of command, not when corruption reached as high as General Davidson. He needed someone outside the system, someone with both the authority to act and the integrity to do so despite the consequences. In his delirium, a name surfaced: Colonel Sarah Hammond, Inspector General's office. She had worked with Wolf's unit 3 years earlier, investigating allegations of civilian casualties during a complex operation. She had been thorough, fair, and utterly immune to pressure from higher command. If anyone could be trusted with this evidence, it was Hammond. Wolf extracted the satellite phone he'd taken from Wren's safe. Despite his weakening condition, he managed to power it on and dial a secure number from memory. A direct line to the Inspector General's office that bypassed standard military communications networks. The connection established just as Wolf's vision began to narrow, darkness encroaching at the edges. He fought to remain conscious as a voice answered. Inspector General's office, this is Captain Reynolds. Need to speak to Colonel Hammond, Wolf managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Staff Sergeant Lucas Mercer. Authentication code Sierra Echo 47 Tango. A pause then. Sergeant Mercer? You're listed as killed in action. What's your... No time, Wolf interrupted, feeling consciousness slipping away. Operation Stillwater. Captain Elias Wren. General Davidson. Black market weapons. My unit was eliminated as cover-up. Sergeant, where are you? We can send... Evidence coming to you. Wolf continued, ignoring the question. Backup copies secured at alternate locations. Trust no one in Southeast Asia Command until you verify. With his remaining strength, Wolf provided brief details on the evidence he'd gathered and his current situation. As he finished, the satellite phone slipped from his grasp. The darkness at the edges of his vision closed in, claiming him completely, as the truck rumbled onward through the storm-drenched jungle. His last conscious thought was of his fallen brothers, Kane, Mako, and the others. Whatever happened next, he had fulfilled his promise to them. The truth would emerge. Justice would follow. Staff Sergeant Lucas Mercer surrendered to unconsciousness, his fate uncertain but his mission accomplished. The ghost of the jungle had delivered his final message. The jungle was silent, too silent. Even the insects had ceased their constant chorus, as if sensing the predator in their midst. Wolf crouched motionless in the dense undergrowth, barely distinguishable from the surrounding vegetation. His ghillie suit, meticulously constructed from local flora, broke up his human outline. To passing eyes, he was just another shadow among many. 2 weeks had passed since his escape from a fob kingfisher, 2 weeks of fever, pain, and grim determination. The locals who had found him unconscious in the supply truck had recognized something in his broken body that warranted compassion rather than betrayal. An elderly village healer had treated his wounds with methods passed down through generations, drawing infection from his flesh with poultices of jungle plants, while Wolf drifted between consciousness and delirium. When clarity finally returned, Wolf had discovered his evidence cache intact and a message waiting on the satellite phone. Colonel Hammond acknowledging receipt of his initial report and confirming an official investigation had begun. Operation Stillwater was exposed, its participants under scrutiny from the highest levels of military authority. But for Wolf, that wasn't enough. Official investigations moved slowly, bureaucratic processes allowing those with rank and connections to insulate themselves. General Davidson had already been quietly removed from command pending investigation, but Wren remained active, protected by plausible deniability and powerful allies. Wolf had unfinished business with Captain Elias Wren, and he had chosen the perfect location for their final confrontation, the very clearing where his unit had been ambushed. For 3 days, Wolf had prepared the battlefield, setting traps, establishing firing positions, and creating false trails. He had studied the terrain until every route, every depression, every angle was mapped in his mind. This was more than tactical preparation. It was the creation of a psychological arena where Wren would face not just a wounded soldier, but the embodiment of his own betrayal. Wolf checked his equipment one final time, the radio transceiver salvaged from Bao's supplies, the weapons cleaned and loaded, the remaining evidence secured in waterproof containers and cached at 3 separate locations only he knew. Whatever happened here, the truth about Operation Stillwater would survive. He activated the radio, tuning to the frequency he knew Wren monitored personally. Kingfisher. Actual. This is Ghost. Wolf used the call sign he'd adopted during his recovery. Position confirmed at original extraction point. Package secured for transfer. It was bait carefully crafted to draw Wren personally. Package suggested remaining evidence, something Wren couldn't afford to let fall into official channels. Original extraction point would tell him exactly where to find Wolf, the clearing where it had all begun. Wolf didn't expect an immediate response, and none came. But he knew the message had been received. Wren would come, if not from duty or greed, then from fear of what remained unaccounted for in Wolf's possession. Now there was nothing to do but wait. As dusk approached, Wolf activated the first phase of his plan. Small receivers positioned around the perimeter that broadcast irregular static bursts over military frequencies. Nothing threatening, just enough communication anomalies to put approaching forces on edge. Night fell, and with it came the distant sound of movement through the jungle, multiple personnel approaching with attempted stealth. Wolf remained motionless, counting footsteps, cataloging patterns. Wren had brought a team, as expected, 6 men, moving in standard search formation. Wolf allowed them to approach the clearing's edge before triggering his first trap, a pressure release mechanism that fired a single shot from 500 meters east of his position. The effect was immediate. The search team froze, then redirected toward the false threat. "Contact east," a hushed voice reported over their tactical frequency, which Wolf monitored through Bao's salvaged equipment. "Single shooter, moving to engage." Wolf triggered the second trap as 4 team members moved east, a recording of footsteps, running west, played through a speaker camouflaged in the undergrowth. The team hesitated, suddenly uncertain of the threat's location. "Possible multiple contacts," another voice, Wren's voice, commanded. Johnson Rivera maintained position. Others continue east. Wolf's strategy was working. Divide and isolate, create confusion, separate Wren from his security detail. He waited until the team had fully split before triggering the third element, a two-time series of trip lines that released smoke canisters, obscuring the eastern perimeter in dense white clouds. Through his night vision, Wolf watched Wren's reactions. The captain maintained outward calm, but his posture betrayed tension. Shoulders tight, weapon grip too firm, head movement too rapid. Wren was afraid, and fear made men careless. "All units converge on smoke," Wren ordered. "Maintain discipline." Only. Johnson remained with Wren now, scanning the western perimeter while the others pushed east into the smoke. Wolf moved silently through the undergrowth, circling behind their position. Johnson never sensed the presence behind him until Wolf's arm locked around his throat, cutting off both sound and consciousness with practiced efficiency. Wolf lowered the unconscious soldier to the ground, leaving him bound but unharmed. This wasn't about collateral damage, this was between him and Wren. "Johnson, report," Wren called, his voice taut with growing unease. Wolf stepped into partial visibility at the clearing's edge, just enough movement to draw Wren's attention before fading back into the darkness. "Johnson," Wren hissed again, moving cautiously toward his subordinate's last position. He found the unconscious soldier and immediately raised his weapon, scanning in a defensive circle. "All units, fall back to my position. Potential hostile contact." No response came over the radio. Wolf had jammed their frequency with the equipment from Bao's cache. Wren was alone now, cut off from his team, exactly as planned. "I know you're out there, Mercer," Wren called, his voice carrying across the clearing. "Whatever game you're playing ends now." Wolf circled silently, positioning himself at the exact spot where Lieutenant Kane had fallen during the ambush. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. Kane had died trying to protect his men from Wren's betrayal. Now Wolf would finish what his commanding officer had started. "You've caused enough disruption," Wren continued, moving warily through the darkness. "Operation Stillwater is already compromised. Davidson's career is over. What more do you want?" Wolf triggered his final distraction, a small explosive charge that detonated harmlessly but loudly at the clearing's far end. As Wren instinctively turned toward the sound, Wolf stepped into the open. "Justice," he answered simply. Wren spun back, weapon raised, but hesitated at the sight before him. Wolf stood motionless, no weapon in hand, dog tags of his fallen comrades gleaming in the moonlight against his chest. His appearance was transformed from the disciplined soldier Wren had known, longer hair, beard streaked with premature gray, eyes holding the flat, predatory gaze of someone who had moved beyond conventional limits. "Mercer," Wren acknowledged, maintaining his aim. "You look like you've gone native, and you look like you're still playing soldier," Wolf replied, his voice carrying the rasp of his injuries. "How's that working out with Davidson under investigation?" Wren's expression tightened. "You have no idea the chaos you've caused. Operation Stillwater wasn't just about profit. It funded dozens of critical operations that saved American lives." "Save. The justifications," Wolf cut him off. "You sold weapons on the black market and killed American soldiers to cover it up. Your own men." "Kane was digging where he shouldn't have," Wren countered. "He became a liability. And the rest of my unit? Just collateral damage? Operational necessity." Wren's cold assessment confirmed everything Wolf had come to understand about the man. Once Kane was targeted, leaving witnesses would have created loose ends. Wolf absorbed the confession with eerie calm, the rage he'd carried for weeks crystallizing into something colder and more focused. You arranged the ambush, gave Bao our coordinates, our patrol route. Bao was reliable, professional. A flicker of annoyance crossed Wren's features. Until he failed to eliminate you. Another loose end I'm here to tie up. Wolf took a measured step forward. You're not in a position to tie up anything, Captain. The evidence is already with Colonel Hammond. Multiple copies, multiple locations. Killing me won't save you. Uncertainty flickered in Wren's eyes, but his weapon remained steady. Then why this elaborate setup? Why lure me here if the system is already working? Because the system is too slow, Wolf replied. Too compromised. Too willing to let men like you negotiate reduced sentences in exchange for information. Another careful step forward. Wolf could see sweat beading on Wren's forehead despite the cool night air. Stay back, Wren warned, tightening his finger on the trigger. I'll shoot. No, you won't, Wolf assessed calmly. Because right now there's still a chance for you to spin this. Self-defense against a rogue operator. But if you shoot an unarmed man, he shrugged. Even your friends in high places can't make that disappear. Wolf took another deliberate step forward, close enough now that Wren's weapon nearly touched his chest. Do it, pull the trigger. Show everyone exactly what you are. Something broke in Wren's composure, fear or rage or both. He swung the weapon like a club toward Wolf's head. Wolf caught the arm mid-strike, twisting with practiced efficiency. The weapon clattered into the undergrowth as both men grappled for control. Wren fought with the desperation of a cornered animal, landing a solid blow to Wolf's still healing shoulder. Pain flared through Wolf's body, but he pushed through it, decades of combat training guiding his response. A precise strike to Wren's kidney, a sweep of the legs, and the captain crashed to the ground. Wren rolled, retrieving a combat knife from his boot. The blade slashed toward Wolf's abdomen, catching fabric but missing flesh as Wolf pivoted. They circled each other in the clearing, the same ground where Wolf's brothers had died, now the stage for their final justice. You're already finished, Wren, Wolf stated, blocking another knife thrust and countering with a strike that rattled the captain's jaw. The investigation is proceeding. Accounts are frozen. The operation is exposed. There will be others. Wren spat blood as he regained his footing. There are always others. The system needs men like me. Men willing to do what's necessary. No, Wolf corrected, deflecting another attack and driving Wren back with a measured combination of strikes. The system needs men like Kane, like Mako, men with honor. Wren lunged forward, knife aimed at Wolf's throat. Wolf sidestepped, caught the extended arm, and applied crushing pressure to the wrist. The knife dropped as bones cracked audibly. Wren cried out, collapsing to his knees as Wolf delivered a final strike that left him gasping in the dirt. Wolf retrieved the fallen knife, standing over his former commander. 5 weeks of jungle survival and combat had burned away everything non-essential in him, leaving only the core of who Lucas Mercer truly was. In this moment of truth, he would discover what remained of the man he had been. Go ahead, Wren wheezed, clutching his broken wrist. Finish it. Prove you're no different from me. Wolf studied the knife in his hand, feeling the weight of his fallen brother's dog tags against his chest. The clearing around them seemed to hold its breath, the same spot where his unit had been betrayed, where his world had shattered. No, Wolf finally said, lowering the knife. You don't get to make me like you. He pulled Wren to his feet, securing the captain's hands with plastic restraints from his gear. The evidence against you is overwhelming, Wolf continued, his voice steady. Testimony from Bao's surviving men, financial records, communications logs, your own confession, which I've just recorded. He indicated a small device attached to his collar. You'll face court-martial, not some private execution. They'll bury it, Wren argued desperately. Men like Davidson have connections that go all the way to the top. This will never see a public courtroom. Maybe, Wolf acknowledged. But you'll still spend the rest of your life in Leavenworth, and everyone who matters will know exactly what you did. Wolf gathered Wren's fallen weapon, checking it methodically before securing it in his belt. You're Men will find us soon. They'll take you back to base where Colonel Hammond's team is waiting. I made sure of that before setting this up. Realization dawned in Wren's eyes. This wasn't about killing me. This was about confession. Justice, Wolf corrected, not vengeance. Wren studied him with a mixture of disbelief and calculation. What happens to you now, Mercer? You've gone rogue, attacked a superior officer. Even with evidence against me, your career is over. Wolf looked around the clearing where his brothers had fallen, their presence still palpable in the night air. Staff Sergeant Lucas Mercer died here with his unit. What's left is something else. He checked his watch, noting the time. Your men will find their way back in approximately 10 minutes. Colonel Hammond's representative arrives by helicopter in 30. I've arranged quite a reception for you, Captain. And you? Wren pressed, still searching for leverage. Where will you go? Back to a system that let this happen that will happen again? Wolf considered the question that had haunted him throughout his recovery. Who was he now? What remained of the soldier, the man, after everything he'd experienced? I go where I'm needed, he finally answered. There are other operations like Stillwater, other men like you, other units being sacrificed. Wolf secured the recording device, ensuring the evidence was properly preserved. Someone needs to watch from the shadows, someone outside the system. He nudged Wren forward, guiding him toward a fallen log where the captain could await his men. In the distance, voices called out as the separated team began regrouping, following signal flares Wolf had remotely activated. This isn't over, Mercer, Wren warned, clinging to his last shreds of defiance. Men like me exist because the world needs us. The system needs us. No, Wolf replied with quiet certainty. The system needs someone to hold it accountable, and that's what I've become. The distant thrum of an approaching helicopter vibrated. Through the night air, Colonel Hammond's people arriving earlier than expected. Wolf's window for disappearance was closing. He looked once more around the clearing where his journey had begun, where Kane had fallen directing his men, where Mako had whispered Wren's name with his dying breath. Their sacrifice deserved meaning, beyond betrayal and cover-up. Tell them, Wolf instructed Wren as shouts from the search team grew closer. Tell them the ghost of the jungle sends his regards. Before Wren could respond, Wolf melted into the darkness, becoming one with the shadows that had sheltered him these past weeks. The soldier who operated by rules and regulations was gone. What remained was something new. A guardian who moved between worlds, who watched from darkness, who ensured that those who sacrificed soldiers for profit would never rest easy. As helicopter searchlights swept the clearing, illuminating a bound Wren and the approaching search team, Wolf moved silently. Through the jungle he had come to know as intimately as his own heartbeat. The dog tags of his fallen brothers clinked softly against his chest. Not just memorials now, but reminders of the oath he had taken in their names. Staff Sergeant Lucas Wolf Mercer had died with his unit in that ambush. But something had been born in his place, a legend that would spread through whispered conversations in military bases across the region. A ghost who watched from shadows. A hunter who tracked corrupt officers instead of enemy combatants. Justice when the system failed. Wolf paused on a ridgeline overlooking the clearing, watching as Wren was escorted to the helicopter under armed guard. Colonel Hammond herself had come, her ramrod posture visible even from this distance. The system would handle Wren now, and Wolf had ensured it had everything needed to do so properly. His mission was complete, but his journey was just beginning. In his pack rested copies of other files discovered during his investigation, other operations, other betrayals, other units at risk. The ghost of the jungle had found his purpose. As dawn broke over the canopy, Wolf disappeared into the shadows once more. His brothers would rest easier now, their sacrifice given meaning through justice rather than vengeance. And somewhere in the system, the corrupt and the callous would feel the first chill of awareness, the knowledge that someone was watching from the darkness, someone who had once been a loyal soldier, but had become something far more dangerous. A ghost, a guardian, a reckoning. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.